and welcome to the Daily Space Weather. Accept no substitutes to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news when it comes to your space weather. If you want the real story, the detailed information, and the most comprehensive space weather you'll find in the known universe, make sure you join us on the regs. Press that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. We've got a berserk CME happening right up here at this crown prominence area. You might see that ejecting right at the last frames of this series of images here. It's spectacular indeed, and it's going to make the rounds. It's actually still in the process of exiting the solar corona as we stream this video. So let's switch to 193 plus 304 angstroms here. We're going to briefly go around the horn. We've got a very high likelihood of major solar flares and the possibility of a coronal mass ejection impact later today. We've got a setting large sunspot group down here in the southwest. The likelihood of it producing large flares is now dropping off over the next 12 to 24 hours. There are also some coronal hole high-speed streams out there on the way. Here's a close-up of that setting group in the southwest. Great little prominence there showing up on the imagery. And let's continue around the horn here. Here's the southern region, a well-defined North Pole-oriented coronal hole there, rotating into the western limb. A lot of filaments on the Earth-facing side of the solar disk, which means a high likelihood of additional coronal mass ejections. Again, there's one propagating as we stream the video. Here's where all the action is on the eastern limb. At least one new sunspot has recently formed. Right down here, that one right there. That'll get a name today. And here is where the main action has been, having produced some large M-class flares. This leading sunspot group is quite active. It is Beta Gamma Delta class. Again, insane crown prominence ejection happening. I mean, the size of that filament ejection is probably something like 40 Earth diameters, at least 20 Earth diameters. It is indeed quite spectacular. Let's take a look at the sunspot situation here on the SDO browse data page. There is your yesterday plus today SDO intensity gram. Again, you can see this new sunspot forming right down here by my pointer. This one up here degrading. This one down here setting. And I think there's one more group actually just rose also. So we'll have at least two new named sunspot groups today. Probably an uptick in the radio flux if we don't see any sudden degradation. Here's yesterday plus today colorized magnetogram. We're going to go over earthquakes and volcanoes before we get to the rest of our comprehensive space weather coverage. First, take a moment to support the channel. One of the links you can find below the video is the link to our Hemp Lucid shop. So check out those products if you haven't. Make sure you enter the promo code SMASHOMASH on checkout at Hemp Lucid, or just shop via our link. So you can get some savings by entering the promo code SMASHOMASH on checkout. You'll find the link below the video, as well as on our homepage at smashomash.com. We do endorse these products. We've tried most of them. If you've got any questions, drop us a line in the comments. We'll be happy to answer them and provide a link. Enter the promo code SMASHOMASH to save some dough on checkout for Hemp Lucid's great array of products. Perhaps some Mother's Day gifts for stress, for sleep, or for immune boost. Or what about the CBD creams and topicals? Good stuff. I've used the full spectrum CBD body balm in cedarwood. It smells fantastic. And also, you can find links to our merch below the video. Today's merch product is the basic definition of the word fraud. Are you familiar with the definition of the word fraud? Fraud simply means the misrepresentation of material facts in an intentional fashion. So if you misrepresent material facts, that might be fraud. If you do it on purpose, it's definitely fraud. And When we saw a pattern of fraud developing from one prominent U.S. official, we decided to make it official. This was back in December of 2020 that we discovered a pattern of fraud here. And when we see a pattern of shady behavior from somebody, we like to call them out on social media. When polls said only about half of Americans would take a vaccine, I was saying herd immunity would take 70 to 75%. Then when new survey said 60% or more would take it, I thought I could nudge this up. So I went to 80, 85. Let's step back and see what's going on planet Earth. Links below the video to the Red Bubble Shop, by the way. And here is a reason to heed volcano warnings. That is a pyroclastic flow from Fuego. Don't be in the way of one of those. That will make for a bad day. Let's see what else is erupting here. Manam now going off in Papua New Guinea. Mount Manam exploding, producing a flight level 080. It's an 8,000-foot ash plume. Not so discreet, that volcanic ash emission, in my opinion. Please do not pole vault the caldera. Luatolo also erupting, 6,000-foot ash plume. 15,000-foot ash plume from Semeru over East Java. It's a flight level 150. Sporadic emissions from Popocatépetl in central Mexico. No indication on the ash plume size. Fuego in Guatemala. Again, that pyroclastic flow we showed you was on May 4th. May 2nd, rather. So on Tuesday. And Fuego's producing about a 15,000-foot ash plume at the moment here. Produced a flight level 164, a 16,400-foot plume of volcanic ash there from Fuego. Nevado de Ruiz, 22,000-foot ash plume as it explodes. Revenador, 15,000-foot ash plume. And Sabancaya exploding. Flight level 240 over its 24,000-foot ash plume. Don't fly your ultralight aircraft over the caldera. Global seismicity here has been fairly minor. No major quakes over the past 24 hours. A decent number of quakes, especially around the western Pacific. We'll scroll up the list here from USGS for the past 24 hours and report quakes over a 5 magnitude. Things have calmed down in the U.S. West Coast, for example, although quite a few quakes there around Alaska. Looks like hardly any quakes of a 5+ magnitude over the past 24 hours. There was a 5.3 at the East Pacific rise there, really far south in the Pacific Ocean, a very desolate portion of the planet. That came in 35 minutes before midnight yesterday, Universal Time, at 23:25. There was also a 5.4 at the Philippines. That was at 0:49, 10 minutes to 1 Universal Time. And also here is one in Chile, a 5.0 at Chile. That was at 2:15 this morning. South of the Kermadec Islands at 6:51, there was a 5.0. Just north of New Zealand there. And those are the 5 magnitude quakes. And let's get back to space. Here's some more spectacular imagery. Here's the past 24 hours in SDO 171 plus 211 angstroms. And feast your eyes on that. Some spectacular stargazing going on here on the channel every day. If you don't know what's going on the local star, why are you worried about ones in distant galaxies? So here's a close-up of that North Crown region. You can see that plasma lifting off there in the final frames. Whoops! It's on its way out. It's unlikely to be earthly directed. Although, again, we are expecting a CME impact today. We could see as much as a KP7. A lot of folks seem to believe that it's on the opposite side of the sun. I'm not sure where they're getting that from. Let's get back to our space weather stats here. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux is currently at 156 solar flux units. There it is in a 1-year chart to contextualize. Contextualize. The black line is the radio flux. The red line is the sunspot number. Perhaps you can see how proportional those are. We're expecting an uptick in the radio flux and the sunspot number coming to later today. Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard not forecasting any geomagnetic storms or geomagnetic unrest. There is a coronal hole high-speed stream on the way also. That'll be here around probably midday on the 6th. At least the density wave will show up around then. Again, we are expecting a possible CME impact today with a rather high-speed coronal mass ejection expecting a possibility of a KP7. My actual guess is KP 6.66. And let's move on to take a look at Earth's magnetic moment from space for the past 4 hours. Things are calm at the moment. If we do see a CME impact, we will see a very significant signal. Anyway, as far as the past 4 hours, I don't think there is a signal. We'll let that play through since our geospace magnetosphere movie here has refreshed. Once again, this is depicting magnetohydrodynamic pressure for the past 4 hours. Magnetohydrodynamic pressure is nanopascals. Those are the units of magnetohydrodynamic pressure. So that's Earth's magnetic moment from space to about 12 Earth diameters. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, showing you the most likely places to see telluric currents: the aurora, pipeline, railway, and power grid induction. If Earth's magnetic poles were really reversing, you would see magnetic fields all over the place on this ground magnetic perturbations map, but you don't, because a lot of people are getting you all riled up probably on YouTube about magnetic reversals, which aren't occurring. KP index is currently at 1. It's an average of global geomagnetism if you're new to the channel. The KP index, it's a measurement of global geomagnetism. Next, the real-time solar wind, which is measured outside of Earth's magnetosphere at Lagrangian point 1 by spacecraft that orbit that gravitational equilibrium point between the Sun and Earth about 1 million miles away. And here is the real-time solar wind. Again, pretty unremarkable here for the past 24 hours. Current conditions are about 400 kilometers a second for the solar wind speed and about 6 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density. Besides that, again, pretty unremarkable. Let's move on to magnetic data. There are your GOES magnetometers. A little bit of divergence happening there around midnight local time for the GOES 18, which is what this M represents. That M right there, that's midnight local time for the GOES 18. Those satellites are located at geosynchronous near equatorial orbit. Next, the heliospheric current sheet, and Earth is in a North Pole current sheet. No changes expected coming anytime soon with that. Kind of approaching the middle part of that North Pole-oriented current sheet. I would also note that there is a lot of North Pole magnetism at the North Heliographic Pole, and you can see it really obviously on this top view ecliptic plane field plot image right there. That big green blob there, that is a huge amount of North Pole coronal hole there at the North Heliographic Pole. It's got to leave there before we're at solar maximum. The South Pole has already left the South Heliographic Pole, and let's move to our line of sight field plot. You'll see that blue portion, that's the solar B field fanning out there as we approach the center of the North Pole heliospheric current sheet, the center of the north magnetic pole of the Sun. And next we'll move to coronal holes. So here's our coronal hole line of sight plot. We've got some trans-equatorial actors here moving in. Quite a few coronal holes there interspersed around these sunspots. Let's take a look at coronal holes here at 211 angstroms wavelength from SDO. So we can expect a pretty violent and lengthy coronal hole high-speed stream from those systems. The density wave should arrive late in the day on the 6th already. So don't be surprised to see that happening. That should be a major signal as well. We'll see a large uptick in the solar wind density, followed by a decrease in the density and an increase in the solar wind speed, the telltale signature of coronal holes. And let's get back to sunspots. So here we got sunspots. Again, we'll have 3295 will get a name. That's this group down here. And 3296 just rose over here near the eastern equatorial region. We've got some great imagery of that for you as well. So here we go. Here's your SDO continuum. And we're going to switch that out to 1600 plus 1700 angstroms because it's just spectacular. And of course, again, the action is mainly happening in the eastern limb here. So that's where we're going to focus. Some serious money shots are coming. Now, the most activity has been in the northern portion. We're going to show this extreme close-up of the southern portion. You can see that beta-gamma class sunspot group there rapidly forming. That alpha class sunspot group to its northeast remaining mostly stable here for the past 24 hours, the time frame depicted in this imagery. Here's the real flare player. This area up here, a series of huge sunspots that are larger than planet Earth. And it's time to move on to energetic particles and solar flares. No spikes in the proton flux despite a recent M-class flare. I mean, a couple little tiny blips there. Those are barely anything. And there is your X-ray flux over the past 3 days. This morning's flare was peak flux around 8:40 universal time. It was an M3.9. And here is some imagery in 94 plus 131 angstroms. There is your high-octane northeastern limb. And if that wasn't a close enough view for you, here's a closer view in 94 plus 131 angstroms. It's depicting 24 hours, ending with that decent M-class flare. We ain't done with solar imagery yet. We've got even more. But first, take a moment to look up. If you want to create your own star chart like ours, use skyandtelescope.org. At least that's what we're currently using. This is the situation over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. And we urge you to join the SMASH team at the silver or gold level. We just put up a post yesterday to reiterate something we said earlier about sky viewing. If you want some additional content, become a member of the SMASH team. More about that later in the video. But that's what's going on overhead at the moment here. The sun chasing Jupiter and Mercury across the sky. Venus rising ahead of the sun. Here's the current situation in the solar system. Gas giants on one side, terrestrial planets on the other. We'll advance this 1 week to give you the 1 week solar system forecast. Here's where things will be on the 11th of May. We will still have a gibbous waning moon by that point. And let's look at coronagraphs. So here are yesterday's coronagraphs from George Mason. That's George Mason University, by the way. You can see some relativistic particles there striking the aperture. You see a bunch of oval-like shapes right there. Essentially solar cosmic rays there showing up. So those are yesterday's frame. I don't see any Earth-directed CMEs there. Today's frames are coming. It looks like we have a CME from the northeast and a second one coming straight out of the north. It's that crown prominence that we were showing earlier. Again, those don't appear to be earthly directed either. Let's take a look at the Soho-Lasco C2 and C3. See that crown prominence making its way out into the greater solar system there at the end. We'll also show stereo A just for some additional data analysis here. Stereo A located right there. Stereo A on the left and Soho-Lasco C2 on the right. Keep in mind they are not synced. We'll let that play through. please pay attention to the time and date stamps at the bottom of the imagery there. Again, they are not synced. By the way, thanks for leaving comments, Robert and Mike. Some spectacular imagery there. A CME coming off there with quite a bit of structure to it. Another example of a different type of a CME here. Here you've got like a shell that's only on one side but not the other, and then you've got a core, and then the core just has a tail behind it. A completely different type of CME. They do take different shapes, and we are often able to see those in the telemetry. So that's another great example of structure in a coronal mass ejection that does typically propagate through space as it slowly disperses and becomes more and more diffuse, aka less dense. Next, we'll look at filaments, and there are certainly a lot of filaments. This is Udaipur, India's ground-based solar observatory, part of the National Solar Observatory. And again, a crazy number of filaments remain on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. The Remco Evenpool one has ejected, and this one up here by the crown has ejected as well. But there are still lots of significant filaments. You can see them as dark absorption features, and some prominences here around the eastern limb. So here's the past 24 hours in our house favorite, 171 angstroms wavelength. Once again, thanks for stargazing with us. And before we get to our bonus features, let's show that incredible crown prominence as it ejects. So there you go. That is the full zoom. 1024 pixels there from the AGOS 18 SUVI. So that has taken quite a while to eject there. Again, we don't expect that to be earthly directed. The likelihood of large flares in the southwestern limb is dropping. The likelihood of solar flares in the eastern limb is, well, it's really rising, as we've got new sunspots and this quite active group with lots of plasma filaments hanging around. And we'll briefly zoom out here so you can see the time and date stamps. And by the way, we will stream once again today on YouTube. Last night's stream got cut off. We're not sure why, but we'll be back once again. And that brings us to our bonus features. Starting out with satellite charging hazards, and we've got satellite charging hazards once again of the internal charging variety. High energy electrons are making it into the circuitry of satellites there. They are, however, minor internal charging hazards, mainly over Africa, the Indian Ocean, Oceania, and the Western Pacific. Here's your GOES electron flux over the past 3 days. We are seeing this dip down now, and we're expecting a major drop when the coronal mass ejection impact that we forecasted arrives. Now you can see once again here, like we said yesterday, we're expecting this to be much lower here. However, if the CME arrives really late in the day, then it might not be a lower reading until tomorrow. But in any case, the green boxes are the forecast, the yellow diamonds are the observation. Here is the 1-year graph to put that in context. Moderately high levels here continuing. Again, we are expecting a drop today and then another drop on the 6th when the coronal hole high-speed stream arrives. Those electrons, the relativistic greater than 2 mega-electron volt electrons, are measured at the F layer of the ionosphere. So we're going to show the vibrational frequency of that layer, the bridge between Earth and space, which we show daily on the channel. The ionosphere getting more and more back to normal here, following the strongest geomagnetic storm in over 20 years. If you're not familiar with this data, don't worry. We'll show the anomalygram, which again is looking a lot more normal. As the ionosphere settles back down to its more average mode. Here's anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. We've got most of our low-frequency anomalies here south of the equator. Southern hemisphere taking longer to chill out than the northern hemisphere, it looks like. And keep in mind, in many ways, the northern and southern hemisphere are like different weather systems, historically speaking, like in the climate record and the fossil record of the paleoclimate. It's almost like two planets glued together in the middle. All right. Anyway, here's the latest image. That's 12 o'clock universal time ionogram and 12 o'clock universal time anomalygram. The total electron content depicts the free electrons out to about 12,500 miles of altitude where your GPS satellite is located. Those free electrons can cause signal refraction. These are the most likely places to see GPS errors. It's our coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere, electrodynamics, total electron content forecast. Things are still fairly organized here. We'll let that play through one more time. Are some electrons getting out of place there? Some significant GPS errors over at North America here, actually. And let's take a look at the latest intensitygram and latest SDO magnetogram. We show the refresh on purpose. And can we get one more glimpse of this sunspot? There we go. That's setting group there. Again, it's going to be dropping in its possibility of producing large flares for the next 12 to 24 hours. Over here, we've just got a lot of sunspots. Not only a lot of sunspots, but large sunspots. Not only large sunspots, but magnetically complex sunspots. So there's that new group that just rose. There's a new group that just formed. Here is your colorized magnetogram rockback. This new group that just formed, this is beta gamma delta class already. And this group up here that just rose, that is also beta gamma delta class. So again, the likelihood of large flares very high in the eastern limb and fleetingly high in the southwestern limb. That brings us to our meteorology segment. And we're starting things out here by looking at carbon dioxide. Yeah, carbon dioxide, which is, by the way, not a pollutant. It is the most important trace chemical in the world. Certainly the most important trace gas. Let's just say that. Yeah, the most important trace gas in the world, as all food pyramids would collapse if carbon dioxide would go away. Check it out. It's kind of low here over Brazil. It's also kind of low over Central Africa. Only 408 parts per million there. Whereas in some other more fertile places, 435 parts per million. What do we got over the eastern U.S.? 445 parts per million. Looks a little bit more conducive for growing stuff. Let us know what you think in the comments. Perhaps that was too controversial for you. And let's take a look at the wind patterns of planet Earth. So there are the surface winds of the east. Here are the jet streams. Let's follow those to the west. There are the western world's jet streams. Quite a bit of cold air being injected into central Canada there and then making its way to the west of Lake Superior. Some legit Arctic air blowing down there into central Canada. Surface winds seen here. A strong offshore wind at New Jersey and Maryland. That makes for good surf, by the way. It stands the waves up. Next, surface winds of the central world, and there are your jet streams. This is what the clouds and fog scenario is looking like over the Americas. Try the 3.9 micrometer radiation map, part of the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite, if you want to figure out if you can see aurora or not. It shows you clouds and fog when it's too dark to use the visible satellite. Highly recommend the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite. I even have shortcuts saved on my smartphone desktop, so I can go directly to the water vapor image or perhaps the visible satellite if I'm wondering if it will be sunny. Continuing on to our weather.gov map, we've got hydrologic outlook there for most of Utah, large portions of Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Washington. We'll scroll down so that you can see the key. There is the color key. Weather.gov is where you want to head if your location is lit. We've got some forecasting to do here. Here is your 72-hour GFS pressure temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. Strange hot to cold transitions here forecasted for north central Texas. What's up with that? A bubble of anomalously cold air. That could spark some harsh weather. Let's see what happens. But first, since we've got this incredible snow melt continuing, let's take a look at snow. Courtesy of Global Cryosphere Watch. So the snow mass balance is right in the middle of the range. That's the middle of the range for the 1982 to 2012 average. The shaded blue area is plus or minus 1 standard deviation. Right in the middle of the range for snow mass balance. Keep in mind that does not include mountains. Snow extent here is outside of the plus or minus 1 standard deviation range, which is the area in between those blue lines. A little bit higher than normal for this time of year for snow extent. That's the two-dimensional snow coverage. And the snow water equivalent is the really relevant factor here in that, well, check it out. That is indeed a lot of snow water equivalent, well outside the plus or minus 1 standard deviation range, as the epic meltwaters will continue here. So be prepared for that. Here's your pressure and precipitation forecast. And indeed, some strong weather is going to be kicking up there in Texas. And snow will continue to fall in parts of the Pacific Northwest. Also the Northern Rockies. Got your GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast. Next, we'll take a look at your satellite imagery. So here's your great windy.com satellite imagery. This is one of the things that we've been streaming on the YouTube channel. See a very large cloud there over Oklahoma. It's actually starting to dissipate as it moves to the east. Next, looking at lightning. And it looks like the most lightning in the U.S. was in Texas and Oklahoma for the past about 10 hours. And how about a real-time lightning map from lightningmaps.org? Yeah, lightningmaps.org. We show it daily on the channel as we want to show people terrestrial strikes. And it looks like Tulsa has some thunder rolling in. There's a little bit of a thunder shower off to your west at Tulsa. You're supposed to show me thunderclaps. Where are they? There we go. That's better. Check out lightningmaps.org. Next time you hear thunder, it could save your you-know-what. And if you think lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place, lightning does strike twice in this. Imagine if there's a magnetite deposit. Are you going to stand there? Let's hope not. All right, now we're going to close out the video with some more real-time data. So first we're going to show the U.S. Doppler radar. Then we're going to show the clouds and fog over the U.S. Again, take a moment to press like, subscribe, share, etc. as we bring that data up for you. Just give us a moment here. Yeah, we're in the process of updating some hardware, by the way, folks. So pardon the technical difficulties. I know it's been an ongoing theme on the channel, as we are unable to figure out which software is causing it. So yeah, I haven't hit the PC with a sledgehammer yet, but I've been considering it. Just kidding, folks. We're just going to simply get a new device. One with much greater capabilities. All right, we are living on a prayer here at this point. The video hasn't shut down mysteriously. And our browser is now back. Oh boy. All right. All right, so there is U.S. Doppler radar. There is the lower 48. There is clouds and fog. And there is water vapor. Use the water vapor map if your Doppler is not clear, if you're not sure what's going to happen next. If you're seeing clouds form, you're probably on a frontal boundary or something like that. The water vapor map will help you to understand how those things work, and will help you to understand what to buy and what not to buy on the internet. So we've got some actual endorsements these days, which we're stoked about. So again, visit the links below the video, as we don't just do space weather content. We are involved in all kinds of health and fitness and nutrition stuff, so join us over on Instagram for that. If you're unable or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallet, help us out with clicks by heading to our homepage at smashomash.com. We launched it in 2019 in response to the pathetic and disgusting censorship of Facebook, whose stock price has done nothing but tank ever since. You can find links to the Hemp Lucid shop, the YouTube channel, Twitter, and more over at smashomash.com. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. And guess what? Now we can actually endorse some products. So we didn't want to endorse any products until we're getting paid for it. And now we've got some things to endorse, like I just had some Anthony's organic cocoa powder with my first cup of coffee this morning. And today, if you're wondering, by the way, we're drinking the Cameron's Scandinavian Organic Whole Bean, which is light roast, I believe. It comes in a 4-pound bag, so save some dough on that. Don't buy your spices in pre-mixed tiny amounts. Buy them in bulk. You can find our picks below the video as well. Amazon.com/shop/smashomash. And if you want to support the channel via subscription services, consider becoming a member of the Smash team, as you'll get additional content. We put out a post just yesterday afternoon, which is only for silver and gold Smash team level. So thanks especially to silver and gold level Smash team. These videos were brought to you in part by those good folks who are helping us to increase the probability these videos will continue to exist, remain publicly visible, and free for all to view. So again, thanks to everybody for tuning in to the content. If you're watching on BitChute, go over and subscribe on YouTube. You're missing like 90% of the videos. We'll see you soon. In the meantime, may that solar wind be at your back. And I of course, have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. I'm headed back to the bunker.